Okay, well, I'm Kelly Thompson, and there's nothing wrong with you. There never was. And I have a dedicated section on my Substack, The Whole, a lit journal, formerly known as Voices on Addiction at the Rumpus, where I feature stories of recovery from anything that disconnects us from ourselves. And today I am talking with the phenomenal Michelle Dowd and about her essay, What We Keep, from issue 2 of The Whole. And I hope you've had a chance to read it. I'm going to be doing live streams going forward, barring unforeseen technical issues going forward, to talk to writers that we feature on The Whole. So I'm excited about doing that and talking about your work today, Michelle. As Michelle writes in her book, we are made for recovery. And so I was really thrilled and excited to uh, see her submit an essay and be featured on The Whole. It's really a privilege and an honor to have your work up. Michelle, I'm going to invite you now. She's the author of Forager, Field Notes for Surviving a Family Cult. And this is the book, and I highly recommend it. I started hearing about this book. I didn't know Michelle. I started hearing from all my friends everywhere. You got to get this book. And they know my background. And Michelle and I both share a history of having grown up inside a high control religious system. And we know the cost of leaving them. So this book is just a must. Please go to bookshop.org, Amazon, anywhere it's sold, and get it. So I wanted to make sure to get that in there because it's a beautiful book. Michelle, her book is a memoir about growing up in a high control religious sect where her mother, a botanist and the cult leader's daughter, taught her how to survive in the natural world. It's fierce, it's clear-eyed, it's beautifully written. It's just beautifully written. The structure is amazing. She has the plants and the herbs that she forages at the beginning of each chapter. So it's just incredibly brilliant structure that I admire very much. She also has a Substack where she writes with the same precision and emotional intelligence that you will find in her work. I saw your post this morning and it just really touched my heart, how beautiful it was and how authentic and real your voice is and how centered you are. And I think I understand why and how that comes from what did you say? You said when you submitted the essay, you said you said the reflections woven throughout this piece invite readers to consider what they carry from the past and what they choose to release in order to move forward. And I see so clearly what you've carried from your past. I feel like we both have maybe a groundedness because of where we came from, and somehow we found this thing that we were able to carry forward out of the wreckage, if you will. Do you want to say more about that?
I could say a lot about that, but it as with you, Kelly, it's taken a long time to I guess accept the reality that we can't change our past and that, and to stop wishing for a better past. And I chose when I wrote Forager not to focus on the worst of it, but taking out what the gifts were, even if they were gifts I didn't ask for and the dark gifts. But I think that the process of doing that, not just writing it, but doing it prior to that, but really looking back and saying, okay, but I am alive and I did survive that. And what gifts have I brought with me? And in order to hold those gifts, you do kind of have to release a lot of the pain. I mean, the pain still comes up sometimes, but you got to release the attachment to it and the idea that you're damaged, or as you say, broken, the idea that any of us feel broken by the things that at the time felt that they broke us. And sometimes we don't really recognize how much we've healed and how much we've mended ourselves back together and that we're stronger in the broken places.
Yeah, and there's this wholeness that's intact, and it's it's not that it's not there; it's that we have to be able to access it. And when we're in an environment where we have to survive, that's impossible. We have to be in a safe place in order to access that original and innate wholeness that is within each and every one of us, no matter what we've gone through or how much and how deeply or we have been disconnected from ourselves. And in your book, you wrote, I think it's in the introduction or the author's note, you wrote, freeing oneself is the first step. Claiming ownership of that freed self has been a lifelong journey. And, and I really relate to that too. Absolutely.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, you're welcome. I just really feel an affinity with you on that journey. And for anybody who has joined us here who has had a similar background, I'm so glad you're here. And I hope that you will follow me and Michelle and just dive in and that we can also follow you and look at your work as well. So um I think one of the things I want to start with, um, so much of this essay is about inheritance, identity, and the moment that you choose your own life. And I'd like you, at this point, I'd like you to read the excerpt that I asked you to read, just a short excerpt.
You did ask me to read it, and I'm just like,
Do you have it?
I phoned it. I have it in front of me. So I'm afraid I'm going to lose you if I try to look it up. I might have to have
Oh,
you.
that's okay. I can read it. Do you want me to read it? Okay. And I did read Michelle's essay. And my background, I was in radio broadcasting for one of my lives, one of the lives I had of my 9 lives and more. And I also was a speech coach when I taught high school and involved in speech forensics. So I really love oral interpretation. And when I read Michelle's essay for the whole, I just felt moved, so moved by it that I wanted to read it aloud. So I went ahead and read it. And so when you go to the link to read the essay, you can listen to the audio and you'll hear me reading it. And I really enjoyed doing an oral interpretation of your work.
Well, that's great.
It was very meaningful to me, yeah, it was very moving. So I will read this excerpt for Michelle. When I look at the sun now, I think about my mother and let it burn spaces into the person I used to be. She was the unrequited love of my life. She walked the trails like she belonged to them. She never looked lost, even when she was. I sought from her what she couldn't give me and what I didn't know how to give myself. A week before she died, she told me she couldn't forgive me for leaving the field. I'm here now, I said, hugging her. It's not enough, she said. She spent the last 10 years of her life completing a massive genealogy project, work her own mother had spent 25 years researching, organizing, and meticulously documenting. A few years before she died, she gave each of her children a 432-page tomb, single-spaced, full of 99 generations of our ancestors. Tucked into mine was a special insert for Michelle. She claimed Elizabeth and John Proctor were our 10th great-grandparents. Anne Howland Bassett Burt, Elizabeth's grandmother, my 12th great-grandmother, was a midwife, a Quaker, and charged with witchcraft. My mother asked me to clear their names. She wanted me to redeem them, but I couldn't even redeem myself. What does it mean to be handed a bloodline of the accused by someone who couldn't forgive your departure? At the time, I wanted to say, Mom, no one thinks they were witches. The witch hunts were about politics, about patriarchy and property and control. But I couldn't talk back to her then or now. As a teenager, I was often called a witch. Long, wild hair, a knowledge of plants, an animist heart before I even knew that word. My mother knew all this. Maybe that's why she gave me the insert. Maybe she thought I'd know how to follow their tracks. Maybe she believed I'd know which footprints were ours. My mother believed in the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Ghost. And I believe in rocks, wind, and birds. Maybe that, too, was her legacy. So, yeah, such a beautiful essay. And I got to say, what struck me, both of our families handed us a lineage of women labeled as witches.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yes, and I need to bring that up. In your case, your mother literally asked you to clear the names of the ancestors accused of witchcraft. In my case, my father told me I was just like his grandmother, a woman he called a witch, because she read tea leaves, she predicted things, she had visions, et cetera, et cetera. So when he compared me to her, that was not a compliment. So yeah, so I was really curious about that piece, and how interesting that is that both of us had that commonality. And why do you think that she chose you as the one to clear that lineage?
Well, in our family, nobody communicates very well, and my mom always said that it was insane, like, that's the word she used, that I was trying to teach writing or that I was, an English major that school. She said, "Nobody in our family knows anything about writing or art. We're all scientists." And my sisters and my brother and everybody, and myself too, actually, we really have I have mathematical brain, but when I went to college, which I was so fortunate to be able to do when I was 17, I didn't have any vocabulary other than, some Bible words, but it didn't translate into the kind of vocabulary that you could test well with. And I really deeply felt that I needed to learn to communicate because nobody in our family ever did. So I think when my mom gave that to me, it was more about she thought that I had the ability to write the letters or do this, find the people. I also have a journal background, so she might have thought that I could research. So I don't know if she was calling me a witch, but I think that she really did think that nobody in our knew how to even speak to each other, which is pretty true. But she was a communicator in her own way, for sure.
Yeah, so she kind of saw you as the educated one who could possibly achieve that, you know? Yeah. Even though, like, to compile that many pages of a genealogy must have taken some real, you know, skills,
Well,
basically.
and my mom did get educated later. I paid actually for her to go to graduate school, and she got a graduate degree in biology late in life. And she was obviously incredibly competent. And then she got a degree in zoology and biology. So, but I don't think she thought that kind of education was going to clear anyone's name. But
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. Hmm.
my mom was someone who was very driven by masculine, what she would consider masculine virtues, but the
Mhm.
whole legacy of masculinity through her father. She really didn't like her mother. She didn't like her daughters. She didn't like she really thought that it was a curse to be born a woman. And so that was the other thing is like I think she really would love for the names to be cleared so that the women in our family wouldn't be as bad as women in general. My mom really didn't like women. Like, there's just a lot of internalized misogyny that
No.
she didn't know that language, but it was there.
Yeah, I think you refer to that somewhere. It has to do with Eve in the Garden of Eden and original sin. And I think women raised in these fundamentalist kinds of belief systems, extreme indoctrination, do internalize self hatred and self loathing because we are taught basically that we have no value and no worth. And in fact, everything is our fault, basically.
Yeah.
And you did talk about that in the essay.
Yep. And there's a huge purity culture, and this idea that and like the Madonna whore dichotomy, but this idea that the virgin is the only one who can give birth, like in the sense of a purity, like give birth purely. The rest of us are very defiled by the act of becoming mothers, even. So there was a
Yes.
in my own mom around body image, but also just like female bodies. And it was always about covering ourselves. And yeah, I mean, I'm not the only one who has that experience. I know there's a lot of women raised with that kind of
Yeah,
misogyny.
absolutely. I know I was. It was a major piece that I had to, took me a long, long time to shed and get free of, although I had an instinct from the beginning. You said something this morning in your post about the voice coming from instinct,
Mm.
and I wanted to hear a little bit more about that. So I'll take a little divergent divergence here just to ask about that instinct and voice.
So I'm a firm believer actually in instinctual voice. I think that we all learn the language of our dominant culture, which in our case is masculine, but it's also very European, Eurocentric. And the dominant culture, like hegemonic discourse, as what maybe they would call it in graduate school, but like the idea that there's
Mhm.
which that is a language of control. And then there's the language that comes from inside of us that is connected. I mean, we all come out of 99% of our human history as connected to the land. We all have ancestors, most of our ancestors were foragers, and even hunters were still like connected to their prey. And we didn't have this technological, this whole emphasis on technological language until just the last 100 years, or, even less with technology. But the last couple 100 years have been really domesticating. And I think that all of us have inside a voice that is more, not only more free, but more authentic, and that has needs and hungers and like things that stem from our bodies that aren't shameful, but we've been taught are shameful. And I think when we those, language comes out of a place that is so much more connected than we were taught in the hierarchy, the hierarchical sort of system of pyramids and all the things that we learn in Western culture.
We are so on the same page, my friend. I agree. It comes from the body and getting beyond the mind, beneath the mind, however we can do that. The voice is not in here. It's in the body. And that fits so much with your affinity with the natural world. Which for me, the survival, was different. I was in the suburbs. So, but I still had a way of foraging out of that whole situation. So, I really think that the word and the concept of foraging is very, very key to your message in your work. And maybe you want to say more about just that word forager.
Well, in the book, I literally talk about foraging plants, which I still do sometimes, but not not as my sustenance. I mean, I
Mhm.
what I what I find, but I don't rely only on that. But we all forage. We all find what's available. And one of the things about literal foraging, when you're looking for plants, is you're not just going out to find certain things. You're going out to find what is available and what is in season. What happens to be that you're in. And that is a way to build a life, is instead of trying to find the things that aren't there, looking at what is. And tension, right? Like us really finding what's in front of us, the friendships that are in front of us, the love that's in front of us. If we're always looking for something that's somewhere else, we can't really appreciate what's right in front of us. And foraging teaches us to do that literally, but metaphorically, um, it's
Mhm.
the same act of finding what is there.
Yeah, so wherever we are, I love that because we can transmute and we can use the environment and wherever we're embedded. And even, all of the pain, the trauma, the suffering, whatever that is, we can find a way to make that useful.
Yes.
Yeah. So isn't that's so beautiful. I love that so much. I have to go back to your mom because she reminds me of my mom so much. And I think about, you know, like, when did you realize that you couldn't live inside the plan she had for you? I know for me, that was an extremely difficult place to be, to realize I could not live up to what my mother's dream for me was, which was to basically be a evangelical in her cult, but be a preacher, whatever.
Um, well, really early on, probably, to be fair. I don't think my mom ever really thought I could live up to her ideal, but she put it out there anyway. There's a part of me that feels like she set me up for, you can look at this two ways. She set me up for failure in the world that I grew up in, but she also set me up to get a freedom that she never got. And she could not leave her father. She could not leave. She spent her whole life wrapped in this place she was born, and her brothers too, and her sister, like all of them stayed. And I think that, I mean, there could have been a part of her that didn't want the competition. If if I had become an adult who stayed and married and had children,
Mhm.
if there wasn't room for very many women, you know what I mean? It's a very
Yeah.
households had far more men than women, and they had a lot of unmarried men, but that you couldn't do anything with an unmarried woman. Like you really had to push her out. We couldn't have that there because that would be tempting. And so I think my mom was from the beginning. I have a sister who's an Irish twin. She's less than a year older than me. And I think she met my mom's criteria for legacy. And then she had two more daughters after that. And so I just think that none of us were really what she was looking for after she had the first one. And so I think by the time I was 6 or 7, I was so sad that I couldn't be what she wanted me to be. And that goes back to my earliest memories. I feel like probably it was as an infant, but I just don't have those working memories.
Wow. Yeah. That's quite a journey. That that mother-daughter thing has to be healed, and that really is spoken to in your essay.
Mhm.
Really shows your healing around that and what you were able to find with that. I know that happened for me too. I did find healing with the mother-daughter, with my mother,
Mhm.
within myself, and in a way that I have a lot of compassion for her. And it's like you said, she couldn't live the life that you've been able to live. And, I'm thinking of what Carl Jung would say about that children live the unlived lives of their parents. And I feel very much on both sides, my father and my mother, that I'm living both of their unlived lives for sure. My father was definitely an artist, which he repressed and had no ownership of whatsoever. And, my mother was a little bit more on the religious side of her dreams for me. So yeah, that's something to always think about, for everyone to even just examine and say, how am I living the unlived life of my parents? What's going on with that? But it's a beautiful thing also, in the terms of evolution too, I think, because it is a gift. We bring a gift. We really do. We have, whether they know it or not. you know, they may never acknowledge or validate that, but so, but for me, that pull up for loyalty was really, really hard. It was like I had to choose between myself and my mother. Um, so we've talked a lot about the content, but I wanted to talk about the craft and the fact that, this essay really is not linear. It's more of a spiral and it's more braided. Can you talk a little bit about the structure and how you found that and how that works for you?
So I've taught braided essays before when I was teaching creative nonfiction in the prisons, and when I was teaching it at Chaffey College, I was encouraging people to writers, students to really find the things that they felt super passionate about or just obsessed with. Like even if they didn't even know why they were obsessed with it, and then I would have
Mhm.
a list, and then I would like encourage them to start braiding these ideas together and see where they're connected. And even things that don't look connected often are. There's also a book, I think it's called Spiral, Meander, Explode, and it is yeah, and it really looks at basically an alternative to the monomyth and the idea that there's this heroic journey that's very masculine. And I love in there, she has fractals and she has spirals and all that, but it feels so much more true to my experience that you just keep wrapping around the same things over and over and making what feels like the same mistakes. But each time you have a little bit more knowledge and you can maybe have fewer consequences to those mistakes. But like eventually you spiral around and you're like, oh, now I have the tools to actually get out of this particular spiral. So then you find yourself looped back in to a center that's richer, but then there's a new spiral. And so I don't see it as this single path that we get to, on top of a mountain. And I think that there's just things that we continue to dream about literally at night, like our nightmares, but also just the things we're processing. And all of us have what we might call core wounds. And those don't have to, I mean, to heal them, I just don't think that happens in an instant. I think that the healing gets deeper every time, like it penetrates deeper. And so when we're thinking about having a core center, like something that makes us whole, we have to like keep like winding around to get rid of all those parts that want to like bifurcate and like dissect and they want to come into that. And I just think for many of us, that is just a lifetime process. to get to the point where we can, truly live in our own center without all the accoutrements.
I really love that because I have a sense from you in reading your work and your book and your story of how you found a center. I mean, actually, it's in your book. You say, and I'll read this real quick from page 277. I have come back to Mother Nature because she has shown me a wider definition of community. Connecting to her connects me to myself. As I eat from the earth, I consecrate what I devour because there is still some wild left in me, and even darkness can be a gift. We are made for recovery. I frequently hike off trail without a phone or GPS device. And sometimes when I don't know where I am, I think I might be lost. But I don't panic. I stop, look around, root into my surroundings, and breathe. So there's your structure. There's your writing process there, and it is, we write the way that we live, and that instinct and that voice, if we follow that, it leads us into our natural structure, doesn't it?
Yes, it really does. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that mention of that center. I sense that in you, that groundedness of having to forage and having to find that. Um, yeah, it's just so beautiful. I love it. I love it so much. Another thing I noticed is that you withhold a lot in the piece.
Yeah.
You kind of let the landscape carry the meaning or the emotion even, and how does that work? How do you
I
talk about image and how that works for you?
I think I probably withhold a lot in life too, but I that I think that what I didn't want to do is vomit up trauma, like, and sort of assault the reader with that. And so I tried to create a lot of white space or a lot of opportunity for readers to bring their own wounds to the story. Because
Mhm.
even though most people don't have similar experiences, they do have similar wounds, that there's different ways that we all acquire these things. And so I wanted to create enough space for interpretation. And this may have a little bit to do with being a lifelong reader, but also being a writing instructor. That something that I've seen that is frustrating, I think, as a reader, is that sometimes people give you so much detail that it you don't know, like, that you can't feel the emotion because you're trying to keep track of all, the other elements. And so I worked really hard not to have too many characters, not to have all the information. And then also, which is a little different than my essays, but in Forager itself, I start with a child voice. And so half the book is really told with so much restraint. Like, I'm not using a sophisticated vocabulary. I'm not using information that my 8-year-old or 10-year-old self didn't have access to. And even the later part, teenage sort of awareness. And so I wanted to keep it super fundamental and not academic, because I went on to study religious studies and, like, really look at the way that the feminine divine has been taken out of the whole, not just the scripture, that too, but the whole concept of what we would consider the religious right. I mean, there's just everything that was, like, stripped of the feminine energy. And I didn't want to bring that knowledge and, like, start talking about the Gnostic Gospels, or, what I mean? I just didn't want to uh, bring the burden of education into it. I wanted to be so fundamental from the perspective of, even if even if you're not educated, you still know most of the time that something is unjust when you experience it. You just don't necessarily have the language to interpret it, and you almost assuredly don't have the ability to fight it. And so there's a sense of disempowering, um, child childlike energy in the book. But I think we all feel disempowered when we don't know how to challenge the systems that we were indoctrinated with. And in the particular cult that I was raised in, which I don't think I made very clear in the book, every single member was there as a child. Every single one. Like, you cannot be in that cult. You can't join in as an adult. And the indoctrination of those of us born there started at birth. But even the people who came from the outside, they generally joined between the ages of 5 and 7. And then the cult took over.
Wow.
So there was just a lot of, you can call it brainwashing, but forms of indoctrination that really make it difficult to ever get out. And a lot of the people I was raised with who left and were shunned in their own way, have been, I just keep hearing these stories, but a lot of them died really young, either from suicide or other things. And it's a lot of them, even if it's really young, are dying in their 50s. And it's, there's just a huge cost to losing everyone you've ever known. And then if you don't know how to heal, you also lose your self-respect because you feel like God is still against you. Like there's just so much of that. They just couldn't recover. And
Mm.
the, inside the cult, they actually do better because they've got that support network. So if you can stay, your life is actually not as bad. And I think that may be true also where you come from, Kelly, but that comes as surprise to many people because people think, oh, if you stayed there, like your life would have been horrible. And I'm like, well, if I was the kind of person who could have stayed there, my life would have been fine, honestly. I just didn't like I everything it just hit every part of me. I'm not saying that it's righteous to stay there, but I am saying that when you're there, you're only surrounded by people who think the same thing you are. So you don't know that you might know you're hurting people, but you think you're right to be doing that. So you go around full of yourself.
Yeah, you really don't have any idea. It's sort of like a fish in water,
Yeah.
and
Don't know the water. Yeah.
it's very insular, and so there's a lot of safety, and it's a place where you can hide, but of course you have no sense that you're hiding. So in our, what I was raised, the extreme fundamentalist religion and sect that I was raised in, it was the same thing. The majority of us were born and raised. By the time, it got to my generation, I'm third generation. Some people are fifth, sixth, seventh even, because it came from Ireland at the turn of the century. And it's gone through many generations. And yeah, so people really can't imagine. And the thing that you're saying about language is so important. Um, I think what you're talking about, you're trying in your writing, you want to trust the reader, and you want to give the reader space to bring their imagination and their own. Of course, as a reader, that's what we love. We're imagining, and we bring our own patterns and background and everything. And we do need space for that. And if we just get overwhelmed with details and facts and things like that. So, I feel drawn to a similar kind of process, I think. Um,
And
although I might be a little more radical in my
well, I think that right is not to tell our story, but is to help the reader find their story. And so
yeah.
and I mean, there's something that's called reader response theory, which says that like whatever the reader brings to the story is the truth because that's their truth. But I do think that it's my job to invite someone to use my experience or to connect to that as a way to unfold and find within them whatever it is that maybe they've been repressing or haven't found language yet for. And you don't need the details of someone's life to be able, I mean, not, you don't need all of it. What you need is the invitation, and the invitation needs to connect to something. So it has to have like substance. It's got to have like the actual body of the experience, but it doesn't need, I don't need people to like
Mhm.
experience what I experience. That's just not important. They need to experience what is available to them through this channel. And I think that's the beauty of reading in general. I love reading someone's story that I can't even wrap my head around how that could be true, even fiction. But inside, I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah, right.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
feel that connection.
And that's why we read. And I love the way that you say that as an invitation, and and the reader does, we bring we project. So we're gonna get whatever we need to get out of whatever it is we're reading, and it's just a beautiful thing. Actually, for me, while you were foraging in the forest, I was foraging in the library, and
Oh,
no nobody censored my book choices, and so that was my way of finding a world other than the one that I was locked in the cult. But yeah, the language is very confining. And for me, it was a lifelong process to be able to, and I imagine for you too, to be able to find the words and the instinctual voice, to be able to put words to it.
Yeah.
because you're caught in this programming, this indoctrination. And how do you get out of that? And it's like, for me, the way I think of it is my mind was made into a cage.
Yes. Yes.
You
And
get that.
libraries, by the way, because they're needed still to this day because they open their doors to people who wouldn't otherwise have access to information like that. And my greatest honor, actually, out of my whole book experience, was that in Utah, my book was at the top of books checked out from one particular.
Oh.
Right. Oh, it's probably a really conservative community where there's, some probably young women who are just looking for a story that they feel that they can relate to. And I thought, well, good for them for finding a story that, yeah. So,
And I remember when I went through a phase of reading about concentration camps, okay?
yeah.
Why was that? Why did that appeal to me? Well, I know now why, because I was in my own kind of camp. And
Yes.
so, it just wow. Um, yeah, I love that.
So, Kelly,
I think we're getting to the point of we need to wrap things up.
in next
Sense.
sense, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll do that. Before we do that, I want you to just tell us a little bit about I know you have an upcoming Artist Way cohort.
Oh, yeah.
And why don't you tell everybody about that? Because it sounds amazing.
Well, thank you. I've done this before, but I'm doing it a little differently. It's going to start right at the new year. So it'll be the first Saturday in January, which is January 3rd. And anyone who's a paid subscriber can participate in this. And you don't really have to tell me because I'm going to send you an email and then you can either respond or not. But what it is an opportunity for us to spend 12 weeks. And some people don't love the language of Julia Cameron's book. And so if you choose not to read all those chapters, I actually appreciated reading it. But if you choose not to, I'm going to summarize it for you and give you an assignment. And if you commit to it, which is writing morning pages every morning, which I'll explain, and then also taking yourself out or taking your inner artist out for a date once a week for 12 weeks. I truly believe that the very first time I did this was so transformative, but I've done it 4 times, not just teaching it, but like I've done the artist way. And every time is more, it's just like, it's more opening than the time before. And I think about it as the spiral, right? Like it's like committing to it. And I don't do it every day of the year. Like I know a lot of people do, and that's beautiful. Like your morning pages, like Julia wants you to commit to a year after you do it, which is great. I personally do 12 weeks at a time. Like I'm all in and then I take a break because even taking myself out on a date is like, it feels time consuming. I think it's a beautiful thing, but I'm not willing to commit to that every week of the year. But when we do 12, we also can compare the kinds of dates that we go on. And so many people, myself included, learn from each other about like, what did you go do? Because sometimes people don't want to spend money. And they're also like, well,
Mhm.
finding your community that was different than things you've done, or like, how did it connect to your artist spirit? And each time I do it, I learn something from the other participants in the group, but we also provide accountability for each other. And I like that. I like that we're all checking in and we check in a way that's public to each other. I mean, a group check in where everybody who wants to participate says what their experience that week and what they did for their date. And I don't know, it's a way to kind of stimulate your inner artist and to basically create a container of growth that you willingly commit to. So I'll send a contract out to people who want to do it. And everyone who's a paid subscriber will get the email. And if you don't want to do it, just don't respond and I'll leave you alone. But if you do want to do it, I'll hold space for you and send you the things that hopefully will make you feel that you have some support as you grow as an artist.
Yeah, I've done the Artist Way, and it is an amazing thing. And I can imagine that with you as a guide, it would be a really fantastic experience. So you guys go subscribe to Michelle and do that sooner than later, okay? And thank you to everybody who joined us today. I appreciate you so much, and I'm so happy to have so many of you here for this conversation. We had some technical difficulties, which seems to be par for the course these days. I don't know, for me anyway. But I just really appreciate your patience. Is there anything that you want to finish up with that you hope stays with um, our participants here today?
Well, thank you for that opening. I truly believe that we all have what we need if we know how to look for it. And I think the way we start looking for it is paying attention. And that I think is what an artist is someone who knows how to pay attention. And if we are fortunate enough to work in the space of art, then we also have an obligation, I think, and it's part of being an artist, to share what it is that we're paying attention to so that other people can see it more clearly. And if many of us do that, then all of us can walk around in the world with greater like eyes for beauty, greater eyes for truth, greater eyes for connection. And art does that for us. So whether you join the Artist Way, just are supporting by reading Kelly's work and the work that Kelly shares and mine, I would love to hear from you. So if you subscribe to me, you can email back, and I'm happy to hear your story and to support you on your journey. And I'm really grateful because if we weren't doing this, Kelly, like we wouldn't have met each other. And so showing up as gives us a chance to connect.
Yeah, I was thinking today about how I found sisters. I mean, I feel like true sisters of the heart in such an amazing way in this venue. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes. Well, thank you all for joining us. Crazy apologies for how long it took us to figure out how to get on this thing, but
All right.
yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
See you guys.